What is up, everybody? Welcome into live stream number 1 of the NFL Draft Weekend 2024 edition. I'm your host, Michael Bauer, joined as always by my faithful co-host, Nate Christian. We got Bob Van Duzer and Zack Duarte in the house. We're going to be breaking it down for you every day after the draft. So today, tomorrow, Saturday, we're here. Just a couple reminders before we get started. Our 2024 Rookie Draft Guide's coming out soon. That's going to be available on Sunday. You could pre-order it now. Info's in the description. We're going to be answering any questions you guys have. There's going to be a lot, so super chats, of course, prioritized, and all info that we have for anything is going to be in the description. Make sure, of course, you hit subscribe while you're here as well. So, gentlemen, round 1 in the books.
Woo. How about it?
What a round.
Yeah, I mean, we saw 23 offensive players go off the board in the first round, which was an all-time record. Previous record was 19, 14 to start. Previous record was 9. So offense was definitely the focus of the first round, which was great for us fantasy players, because it was 14 players that are fantasy relevant selected in the first round. I mean, so much talent, and we're lucky to have quite the pool now of players to pick from.
Yeah, we got some great picks to get into. We're going to talk all of the players, all the fantasy relevant landing spots, and get into our favorite picks, our least favorite picks, of course. And as Mike noted, answering all the questions along the way and getting into plenty of odds and ends that come up, I'm sure, talking about fantasy drafts. Maybe we'll talk about some players that won the draft last night that are not rookies, as well as players that lost the draft last night that might not be rookies.
Yeah, and a lot of landing spots that we didn't really prepare for, right?
True.
So after the first day, I'm really not feeling great about these landing spots. I know that we'll talk a lot about that, but I mean, for all the practice that we did individually and as a group together, and even in our Discord, we still didn't see some of these landing spots, which is we never saw Vegas with Bowers. We never saw that. So I'm sure we'll get into a lot of that, but just a lot of landing spots that I just don't love after the first day.
Yeah. Zach makes a good point too about our Discord, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. If you want a great opportunity to get our rookie draft guide for free, $10 tier, you get that as well. And we have a super chat coming in. This is from Waffle Hauser. And it's just saying, no question yet. I'm just here to listen and slightly irritate Zach. And look, Zach is easily irritable too. He is our resident Florida man. So, but Waffle Hauser, thank you. He's one of our patrons, and we love chatting with him in our Discord community. We hope to see you guys there as well. Plenty of room for everybody. So come on in. Best Discord out there. I think we could all agree on that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Most active Discord for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So come on in. Come hang out with us.
Where we know everybody's names, by the way.
Yeah,
that we do. We try to. So, all right. So let's get to it. Do you guys want to start with the first overall pick?
Get right into it.
All right. Caleb Williams goes to the Bears. I mean, we kind of saw it coming from a mile away. It's been the chalk pick for a while, but how are you guys feeling about it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one first. I mean, we've said it a handful of times looking into these, mock and the mocks that we've been doing, rookie mock drafts before the draft with landing spots. Chicago is pretty well set to add a quarterback. We're not looking at the situation where Caleb is going to a situation without weapons. That is something that is not the case with Caleb. As much as we like to put a bit of a pause on waiting on rookie production from quarterbacks, when they're in good situations, especially one like Caleb Williams, in my opinion, that is just solid to begin with. I love this pick. Locks in the 101 for me in Superflex. Quarterback 1 without question. I like the spot, to say the least. I'm a fan. Zach, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, didn't like a lot of the other landing spots, so it just makes me feel that much more secure about the Caleb landing spot. Had already felt that way, too, because of how they've kind of insulated him with talent in that offense. I mean, you look at the other quarterbacks, and there is just no situation offensively that compares to this one. Maybe J.J. McCarthy, but, I think there's more volume in terms of talent in Chicago right now with all the skill position players that they added in free agency, that they drafted with Odunze. So, I mean, I would feel very secure and comfortable drafting Caleb Williams at 101 at this point.
Okay. Yep. All right. Let's move on to our next pick. And we had Jayden Daniels going number 2 to the Washington Commanders. I think the lead up to speculation was Drake Maye, right?
For a while. And then I think it recently kind of switched the last couple of weeks. It kind of locked into Jayden Daniels. They're pretty excited about his, dual threat ability. He's definitely a great rusher. He's going to have some offensive talent around him. Terry McLaurin's there, Jahan Dotson's there. You got some good running backs in their backfield with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. But, they still have some holes to fill. They need to replace Curtis Samuel, who is a good NFL wide receiver and a really good wide receiver 3 for them last year. And they also need to figure out tight end because Logan Thomas is no longer with the team. So a couple pieces for that offense to still figure out. But, Jayden Daniels, if that offensive line isn't great, he's got the scrambling ability. He can make something happen still. So, still some high upside there with Jayden Daniels, the second overall pick.
Yep. Plenty of questions to go along with, though, with the, our biggest concern, while the rushing is great, and I don't think you should discount a player because while his rushing is great, he doesn't protect himself well. Yes, that could take you off the field at any given moment for an extended period of time, but the rushing ability is elite, great thrower of the ball, very talented, does have some weapons to work with. Who knows how that offense really comes together. Cliff Kingsbury is the OC, defensive head coach, and Dan Quinn. We'll see how it pans out. Zach, your thoughts?
Well, how dare you besmirch Zach Ertz like that, Nate? How dare you?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Zach Ertz.
Sorry, I forgot about that one.
No, but
there.
It's probably one of the better landing spots. I have a lot of reservation about his ability to protect himself. We had this discussion before we jumped on this live stream about Anthony Richardson, and his inability to do that last year cost him time on the field. And I hate to do this just because it's Washington, but like RG3 was the same. Yeah. He couldn't protect himself, and he probably shouldn't have been on the field at that point when he got hurt. I think it was he should not have been in the game. But Jayden Daniels' inability to protect himself or take lesser hits is something that really concerns me because of the capital you have to invest in him. So, again, one of my concerns with him and a reason why I could potentially consider what Nate did the other day, and we'll get to McCarthy in just a second, is draft McCarthy as the second quarterback in Superflex drafts.
And real quick to add on, too, not just looking at the landing spot, we had reservations along with the rushing, not protecting himself, but that fifth-year breakout is always a concern. And while he had reputable production up until that breakout last year, it still doesn't bode well for how a player is going to acclimate to the NFL. So he's a little older prospect coming in. Doesn't have as much time to lose, too, if he can't figure out how to protect himself. So, I mean, there's plenty of red flags. Landing spot is fine, but not elite. Doesn't have the same complement of weapons. Yeah. While decent enough, not great.
Yeah. And Eric, I see thoughts on Nabers will be getting there shortly, but let's move on. Drake Maye goes to the New England Patriots.
Yeah, this was
pick number 3.
This was the landing spot I was not very excited about because there's not a lot of talent surrounding him in New England. Sorry, Sean. I know you're, you know the truth though.
Sean's salty about it.
Yeah, they have an offense that they need to continue to revitalize, and we'll see what they do on day 2. There's definitely wide receivers available, and tight ends as well, so they can continue to invest in that offense. But they need to surround Drake Maye with some weapons because as good as Drake Maye is right now, I mean, their wide receiver 1 is Demario Douglas, who I like a good bit, but not as a wide receiver 1 for an NFL offense. And then outside of that, you got Kendrick Bourne coming back, but he's coming off an injury as well. Not
Kayshon Boutte.
Kayshon Boutte's there.
Gordon.
Yeah, the cupboard's not bare. See,
it's not bare, that's for sure. But
not bare, but expired.
So I'm a little worried about his landing spot, but I do really like Drake Maye as the talent, the upside there. So I'm still gonna be buying into Drake Maye. I will consider him as the quarterback 2 on some places, but also the landing spot, I will have some reservations. So we'll kind of depend on my timeline for my team because I don't think we're going to have year 1 production at a high level from Drake Maye. So, if we're looking more long term, I think Drake Maye could still be one of the better quarterbacks in this draft, but you're going to have to be patient.
Yeah, I threw out this phrasing when we did an earlier mock, and I drafted Drake Maye at the 103 or whatever it was, and this is what that landing spot did for me. But, keep in mind how the Bryce Young situation has panned out so far. With not having the weapons around him, you can still value the player as highly as you do because I think the long-term upside, the long-term talent, all of the things he does well is still there. But you have to keep in mind while we're playing this game of Dynasty that the value is going to fluctuate. So while he's the 104 or 105 today, next year, like Bryce Young was 102, 103 last year, now he's maybe a late first round pick, who knows? But depending on the circle you're in, you have to be kind of prepared to eat that hit of value if you are in on that. And that's a great point bringing up what's your timeline look like and what you can hopefully expect, if anything, production-wise out of these guys. If you're looking further down the road, hey, Drake Maye might be that much better for you as a higher ceiling talent than maybe another quarterback we're going to talk about at some point, maybe. But certainly the lack of weapons around him now is very much a cause for concern and development at the end of the day too. Yep. You know, if you're not producing, if you're not getting to jive and really learn an NFL system, lack of weapons can do that, can really stall that too. So that's something to keep in mind with his long-term longevity and whatnot. So Zach, yourself.
Drake Maye is a player I wish could just redshirt the year almost. Just not like I think if he gets on the field, there is a potential to have another Bryce Young situation. I thought that was a great mention by you here. Like just do this thing where you put Jacoby Brissett out there, let him be the quarterback. And when he came in last year in Washington, he was good. He was good for Washington last year. So, you know, it's a vaunted division right now with the Jets, the Dolphins, the Bills. I would redshirt him for a year. Take another high pick next year in the draft, potentially, depending on how you do. Surround him. Like, look what Carolina's trying. They're trying to surround him now with whatever they can get with what they have left. Deontay Johnson, they moved up in the draft to get Xavier Legette, but those are not like premium pieces that you'd like to surround your young quarterback with. The other thing I harken back to is yeah.
Sorry, I had to throw that one out there.
Word of the day
is how NFL ready are the UNC quarterbacks? Like, we've looked at the last two, Sam Howell and Mitchell Trubisky have not been ready for the NFL. Mm-hmm. So is there something happening at UNC that they don't have their quarterbacks ready for the NFL?
I don't 100% agree on Sam Howell. He played pretty decent.
Not really.
No. I mean, when you break it down, peel it back.
Quarterback 3 at one point.
You put up fantasy numbers. That doesn't equate to actual real life.
Wide receivers weren't good.
The thing about UNC quarterbacks that I don't think people give enough credit for, and this is something I've been diving into with looking into 746 players that I've been talking about in our Discord, diving into production profiles and comparing them across the entire NCAA, factoring in things like overall production, let alone what the level of competition they're playing is. UNC doesn't play, is probably vaunted as a higher quality of opponent, but ACC, yeah, they're probably facing top 50 opponents, but rarely are they facing consistently top 25 opponents. And that could be something that indicates, hey, UNC, these quarterbacks are not playing the highest level of competition. Who knows? It's just a thought and a way to, pump my production grading scale that everybody in the Discord has been pumped about, but it's a cool thing I'm working on, but something to think about. Food for thought.
So Waffle Hauser throwing out another super chat here. Hit that like button, make my guys famous. Also, someone started a rumor. Nate will sing at 100 likes. Who started that rumor? It was me, Rumor Hauser, and also Yoda sound is crisp and clear. Someone tell Sean I set up the audio, or as per your screen name, let's set up audio. I did.
Let's give some credit. Mike setting up the audio. Sean producing behind.
Sean doing a great job.
I took care of the cameras.
And Zach was over on the recliner.
Nate watched me take care of the cameras, but also helped with everything. So
I did make breakfast.
Zach did make breakfast, so he fueled us.
Thank you.
I brought a cable.
So and Nate brought a cable.
A church cable specifically.
Credit where credit is due. And hey, let's shout out our Discord moderators for helping make that Discord community. Yep. Caleb, Hoff, you guys rock.
Zach, you're also on the clock in 2 drafts, I'm being told, as per the chat.
That seems like a them problem right now.
Well, everyone,
I will be a minute.
Christian Wade wants you to make your pick. So you know what? You're more than welcome to do that as we dive into pick number 4 in this NFL draft. Offense heavy. It's almost like an actual rookie draft so far in Dynasty. We got Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Arizona Cardinals. You can't buy his jersey yet. I love this landing spot personally. A really great weapon for Kyler Murray. What do you guys think? I think we're all in agreement. This is a really good spot.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what D-Hop did with Kyler Murray, a couple years ago. That was really, really good. There's been some comparisons actually comparing Marvin Harrison Jr. to D-Hop and their style of play as an ex-receiver. So, we know Kyler Murray is a really good quarterback, and him having a true ex-wide receiver 1 again, Marquise Brown really could not fill that void, and he even put some good numbers when he was on the field. But I think with Marvin Harrison Jr. there, Trey McBride's there, going to definitely be some target competition, but usually the tight ends kind of get theirs and the wide receivers get theirs. And I know you're a Michael Wilson fan over there, but Michael Wilson's not that close to Marvin Harrison Jr.
No,
So,
sorry.
Marvin Harrison Jr., the bona fide wide receiver one on this team. I mean, you're going to probably be seeing 150 targets, 140 targets for Marvin Harrison Jr., which is going to equate to, possibility for a top 12 finish his rookie year.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome.
R.I.P. Greg Dortch.
Yeah. Well,
He's still the slot receiver.
can't kill what's already dead. But this was easily, I think, probably our favorite wide receiver landing spot of the night.
Yeah.
This is the combination of landing spot, talent, and situation that they're going into. Great quarterback to throw the ball. He's the vacuum target in that offense. So, I mean, he's going to get a ton of work. And, even if they add some compliments and, as for what's the situation around him, still good news for Trey McBride as well, the guy who I think can be the second receiver in that offense or second target focused in that offense. So this one's pretty cut and dry. I think one of the easiest smash picks in your rookie draft, easily locking into 102 for me. Zach, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it all there. I think this is a great fit. It's perfect for Kyler. I think it's perfect for everybody in that offense. It shifts Trey McBride and Michael Wilson to where they should be. They could go out and get another wide receiver. I think this is one of the situations where drafting a player makes everybody in that offense better. Like James Conner, any running back they draft, another wide receiver they draft, because this is the alpha in the offense. This is the person that commands the defensive attention so that all these other pieces can do what they do best. So this is the best landing spot possible for any of the top three wide receivers. This is where you wanted them to go because they're already set up with the quarterback. They're already set up with other weapons as well. And there's opportunity for this player to succeed.
Yeah. Also, Zach, I just want to circle back. You're always kind of getting on people for making sure they're active in their leagues. So you can just go ahead, make sure you make your picks as soon as possible.
Oh, I got 8 hours, so we're good.
Okay.
It wasn't my fault that I got on the clock as soon as this clock started.
All right. So
y'all were the problem.
I'm sorry, Christian. He's got 8 hours, so he might take some of it. So let's move on. Our next offensive skill position pick, that is at number 6. Malik Nabers goes to the New York Giants. I guess R.I.P. Isaiah Hodgins. Zach, sorry. Darius Slayton has not been extended. I don't believe he's been extended a contract. So Daniel Jones may be returning to 2022 form. He's got a legitimate weapon now. We don't know what Darren Waller is going to do yet. So
nothing.
This is we don't know. I mean, we don't know if he's going to retire yet.
For the last 3 years.
True.
But by that I mean we don't know if he's going to retire or not. Sorry, that's what I meant. So
clarify, nothing.
Okay, Darren Waller's doing nothing. But Malik Nabers, Daniel Jones, he's got a legitimate weapon now. What do you guys think? I don't hate it as much as other people do.
Yeah, I don't hate it as much as what seems like Twitter's going on.
Definitely
right now.
moves him down the board a little bit, though.
Does it? Because he's the vacuum target there. I mean, Darius Slayton, like you said, hasn't been extended. He led the team with 79 receptions last year. Wan'Dale Robinson's there, but he's the slot receiver. He had 78 receptions last year. Darren Waller had 74. We don't know what he's doing, and it might be nothing. Barkley is not there anymore. He had 60 receptions last year. I mean, I like Devin Singletary, but I don't think Devin Singletary is going to have 60 receptions. So, not to be the vacated targets guy, but there's going to be someone that has to catch the ball there. And Malik Nabers, we talked about Marvin Harrison Jr., 140, 150 targets. I don't know if we'll see that for Nabers exactly, but I would easily expect 120 targets, which gives him really good production right away, especially because on an offense like that, that's not going to be a really efficient offense. You have an efficient player. He can create yards for himself. He can, you can manufacture touches for him if you need to. Not that he has any issues getting open. So it's kind of like how Barkley was still good on the Giants without the Giants being good. Nabers just kind of fills that new role as the best player on that offense. And, he might be the only one you really want from that offense, but I still think I'm not dropping him that low. Like I'm happy picking him up 104, 105.
I think for me, it's not necessarily of how low he can or should go. It's just how low he might go and it's more of, for me, that it's justified more of, hey, watching your rookie draft, see if he's falling down the board. Don't let him fall much further than he should. Take the value as it's given, as they say. But I think 100%, and not, like you said, to be the vacated targets guy. It's not even in that. It's just, who the heck else are they throwing to? It's Wan'Dale Robinson, like you mentioned, and a bunch of
great target share.
He's going to have great target share. And at the end of the day, I think you kind of have to, he'll go as the offense goes for sure. How good does this offense get? Does Daniel Jones bounce back to some relevance? Who knows? I am certainly more in on this pick than I'm not.
I think overall for the season, Nabers will have a really good finish for a rookie year. I think he'll still be like a top 24 wide receiver.
I think
I think
that's-
easily.
But on a weekly basis, because of the consistency of the Giants' offense, I think you'll see less consistency.
And he's somebody that, with most rookies, while at the end of the year will have a good finish, somebody you don't want to be trusting in your lineup. So don't pencil him in as your wide receiver 2 just because he's an awesome value or any of this stuff, because we think he'll finish there. It's probably going to be pretty rare that you know when to start this guy.
And Zach, you're being assigned Xavier Legette at 103, I've been told. But what are your thoughts on Malik Nabers before we move on? The first round.
I love how that's the topic of conversation in the chat. This is a situation where I do agree with Nate. I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for targets. My concern is the lack of touchdowns. Daniel Jones' most successful season was 2 years ago, only 15 passing touchdowns. A lot of his success came on the ground. So what does that mean for Malik Nabers? Probably exactly what Bob said. You're just not going to know when to start him. He's going to have some of those dud weeks. I kind of categorize Malik Nabers as somebody that you can potentially try to buy mid-season or after the season when there's a frustrated owner. And that's a lot of the players after this point, right? Where the landing spots aren't that juicy. You might be able to find an owner that's annoyed at the situation or annoyed at the uncertainty of the week-to-week production, a la JSN this last season. So, you can definitely draft him. Absolutely worth being drafted 103, 104 in Superflex leagues, but also somebody you can potentially keep tabs on throughout the season and see if you can buy at maybe a little bit of a discounted price mid-season or even after the season.
Zach, 2 years ago, Daniel Jones, only 15 passing touchdowns. His wide receivers were Richie James, Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, Lawrence Cager, Sterling Shepard, David Sills, Marcus Johnson, and the corpse of Kenny Golladay. I think we can say Malik Nabers is better than those guys. So
somehow a better wide receiver room.
Yes.
maybe those guys would still have jobs if Daniel Jones was that much better.
But still, I think that this is stock up for him. And if you have a buy low opportunity on Daniel Jones, depending on what your quarterback situation looks like.
I mean, if you need a quarterback 3, you probably can still get Daniel Jones for like an early second. I don't hate it.
Sure. Real quick, just before we move on, getting into the psychology aspect of things, you have to consider that people that do draft Malik Nabers, with this landing spot not being super flashy, if there is that flux in season where it's like, crap, maybe I did make the wrong decision here, that much more opportunity for you to knock on some doors, get in some offers. If you can't draft him now, if you can draft him now, I'd say do it. Be ready to weather the storm. But another guy, supreme talent, vacuum target, like we've said. I like that. That's a new term we have. Yeah. But put it on a shirt, I guess. But
we could do that.
Let's move along.
And if you want to buy a shirt, link is in the description. You could buy a beautiful shirt like this.
Sweatshirt.
Yep, sweatshirt. And maybe one day we'll get some Dynasty Rewind flannels. I would love to see. Look at that
little patch.
That would be great, wouldn't it? Nice. So now again, we'll take a few questions, comments here. Super chats will be prioritized as they come in. But Sean, why don't you throw one up on the screen for me? See what we got. All right, I told Sean to put this one up first, guys. Malik Nabers or Drake London in a Superflex 10-team league.
Nate.
Are you gonna ask me first?
Yeah.
Gonna ask me first. Okay.
I'm going Malik Nabers, by the way.
I'm probably going to lean Nabers. But I think this is a really fair deal either way. I probably lean Nabers a little bit because I think there's going to be some wide receiver talent added to the Falcons either in day 2 or very early in day 3, just because Darnell Mooney as a wide receiver 2 is not ideal. But they have Kyle Pitts there, who's also going to be taking targets. Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles injury, being 35 years old. I still think he's going to be productive, but there is some question marks there. I like the idea of the vacuum targets that we're talking about with Nabers and Drake London. While he is a vacuum target share guy, I mean, it's never really translated to fantasy points over the last 2 years. Wide receiver 43 finishing points per game, wide receiver 41 finishing points per game. I think Malik Nabers is better at creating yards himself. So I'm going to rely on the guy that can do something without needing someone else to do something for him.
Nate. Drake London has not had a quarterback to throw to him for the last 2 years. Now he has 2.
Actually, hey, to be fair, you guys owe us a shot because Desmond Ritter
True.
did throw for over 300 yards 3 times last year.
We did have a
But I'm going Nabers here. I just want the more talented player. If I want wide receiver 31, I could just trade for Jacoby Myers and hope for wide receiver 2 upside. Bob, Zach, what do you guys
They're
thoughts on
similar
this one?
players, and I get to re-roll at least.
In all fairness, I think there's probably an argument to be had here of what do you need now? Because I think ultimately Drake London's probably the better producer now.
Yeah.
While he hasn't gotten there yet, I think that's what you're looking at. And I think in turn, his value will continue to rise while Nabers maybe fluctuates or dips, makes it more accessible. I don't think you're getting Drake London at this cost again anytime soon, because I do think he does well this year personally. But maybe if you're looking a little more long term, and at the end of the day, for me, you're trading one for one at the same position, or you could be.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever side has the plus, whether it's an improved draft pick on one side or a free draft pick on the other, that's the side I'm going with. But in a nutshell, in a vacuum, I would lean London.
Zach?
I don't know how much more I can add to this conversation. I think this is for me pretty easily Malik Nabers. But I agree with Nate. I think it's a pretty even trade.
I think it's very even.
It's which flavor do you like better? Do you like the Drake London flavor or do you like the Malik Nabers?
Kinder Sunday.
I'm gonna go with Malik Nabers because I think he is the more talented player. Taking his temperature.
I'm just seeing if he has rookie fever.
Okay.
I guess I think this is very even. I'm not saying I'm taking Nabers head and shoulders above London here. I think this is very fair either way.
I've been on the record that I think the overhype of Drake London has been a little bit too much. And I think this is a good example.
I agree 100% with that. I agree.
I think this is a good example.
John, let's take one more question before we move on. How's that sound? All right. John Paul Taylor says, great to see you guys. Hey, great to see you too. Does Bauer's landing spot now change where you draft him in Superflex, no tight end premium? Worthy over Bowers at 108/109, for example. I mean, Xavier Worthy, we'll get to him, but touching on it real quick, the Chiefs did trade up with the Bills, oddly enough, and they grabbed Xavier Worthy at the back end of the first round. Zach, let's kick it off to you because you're not making your draft pick right now. You've been auto-assigned Xavier Legette, as he's been called by Uncle Roger. But what are your thoughts on this one here?
On Xavier Legette?
No, on this question.
Oh, well, I wasn't listening to the question, so because you obviously noticed I was texting someone, so go ahead.
All right, then I'll tell you what, Nate, let's start off with you. Zach, you could read up on the question.
All right. So the question is, does Bauer's landing spot change how we're thinking about him? Absolutely does, unfortunately. This is obviously going to affect your own production, not just because Michael Mayer is there, which is not going to be a problem for Bowers because he's obviously going to be the tight end one, but I'm a little worried about the quarterback. Stop that over there. I'm worried about the quarterback. Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, neither one is a franchise quarterback. Neither one's the answer long term. And if it was just Bowers out there as the offense, I'd be okay with it because he'd be a target hog. But you got Devontae Adams out there who we know we can put in for 120 plus targets. You got Jacoby Myers out there who is a very good wide receiver himself. So as a rookie, I'm looking at Brock Bowers as probably the third target on this team. He doesn't just step into the second target on the team. As much as I love Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers is a pretty good tight wide receiver, and he's not just going to surpass him. Maybe he's the 2B at best by the end of the season. But I just think there's not going to be a lot of volume here for Michael Mayer. So at that point, now, do I want to take Xavier Worthy over him? That's going to be probably a separate conversation. But I think at the 108, I'm still considering Michael Mayer without the tight end premium. I get it.
Bowers.
Maybe. Who did I say?
Michael Mayer.
Oh, Michael Mayer.
Little
One of the Raiders tight ends. What do you guys think?
I mean, I agree. I think it certainly changes how the draft board falls because this is not going to be favorable. You touched on the year one production. For me, the bigger concern is the quarterback and the volume itself. Because I think when you look at how this offense is going to play out, I think you have Michael Mayer playing a lot of inline, then you have Brock Bowers split out to, be a big slot basically. I think is how he's going to shape up in that offense. But there's already established vets, and probably the biggest problem is nobody to really throw him the ball. And I think another guy, offenses can only, there can only be as much fantasy production as the offense goes. And if it's a low producing offense, like I think this one's going to be, it sucks because he's a good player, but I think he kind of got, a raw deal with the landing spot, at least early production wise. but dude's still a stud. I think if you got time to wait, if you're a team that is at the 201 in your draft, 202, and you're estate planning, this might be an opportunity for you to trade up a little bit into the tail end of the first, swap out with one of these competitive teams that may be there that don't necessarily want a project tight end, because before the drafts, and this is why you don't pencil anybody in, or if you do, you pencil them in, not pen them in. You don't pencil anybody in because something like this, we were expecting or thinking that Brock Bowers was going to go to a much more favorable landing spot. Nate, you touched on this, is probably one of the worst landing spots. Zach, you as well, in other discussions. One of the worst landing spots, not going to produce. Competitive team, as much as they might like Bowers, maybe not the best solution for them at that pick.
Zach, before we get to you, Christian commenting, because he got drafted by the Raiders, he no longer is a generational tight end prospect? Question mark. We didn't say that.
I don't recall saying that.
He could still be a generational prospect, and we cannot like the landing spot. Both of those things can clearly be true. But Zach, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, here's the thing: how are the Oakland Raiders or how are the Las Vegas
the
Raiders?
Oakland Raiders.
They should be. How are the Raiders positioning themselves to play football games? And they're going to try and keep this game close with their defense. They just signed Christian Wilkins in the offseason. They obviously have Max Crosby. They're going to try and play games close to the vest. They're not going to try and outscore Patrick Mahomes. They're not going to try and outscore Justin Herbert. They're going to try to slow down these games, I believe, with the running game a little bit more. Of course, the passing is going to be an aspect, but I think the Raiders will probably be bottom 10 in the league in terms of pass percentage.
Possible.
I think that they're going to try and win games 13-10. It's Antonio Pierce, a defensive-minded head coach. And they're just not going to outscore teams. So it's a situation where the quarterbacks there aren't great right now. They're not going to get one of the top 6, which we thought maybe they were. Maybe they go get Spencer Rattler, but that doesn't change anything for me about those quarterbacks there. Gardner Minshew, I love Gardner Minshew, but I loved him because he had Shane Steichen. He doesn't have Shane Steichen, and you saw how that affected Philadelphia last year. A head coach that is offensive minded makes a big difference in how a quarterback plays. So to me, this is sketchy quarterback play. Gonna try and run the ball. Gonna try and keep it close to the vest with their defense. You saw what their defense was able to do to the Chargers last season. They basically ended Brandon Staley's tenure as the head coach. I just don't think that there's a lot of volume to go around for not only Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, but now Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Zamir White, and they're going to draft probably another running back or another wide receiver at some point in this draft. So it has nothing to do with Mayer and everything to do with Bowers. I'm just following the Nate train here. It has nothing to do with Bowers and everything to do with the situation that he's put into, which is just not a high volume situation.
Yeah, we play fantasy football, which is based on a box score.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if Bowers is a generational prospect or not when it comes to the box score and playing for the Raiders.
Yeah.
Well,
And sorry.
No, go ahead, Bob.
Plenty of generational prospects have fallen short. Great college profiles and everything. But at the end of the day, too, we're not saying not draft the guy. We're just saying, hey, take a chill pill, let it fall a few picks, let him fall. There's no reason to take him nearly as high as, Kyle Pitts was years ago when similar-ish situations where it was really great tight end coming in. Obviously doesn't have the same landing spot and opportunity that Kyle Pitts has, but we learned a lot from that, in my opinion. Because tight ends, in the grand scheme of things, you need points in your lineup. Tight end isn't going to be awesome. It's one of those, again, to throw out some cliches with these not fun landing spots. Look at the guy later, knock at some doors, see if you can pick him up later. If you can take the production hit, because it's just frankly not going to be there. It's just realistic operations of how to look at things first. He's a generational prospect. Keep as much as we want to say talent over situation and everything, at the end of the day, that's what plays a role in what creates fantasy points.
Yeah, and one last thing on Bowers, and we probably don't even need to discuss him once we get to him.
Yeah,
but you know what? I forgot what I was going to say now.
Well,
I was listening to Bob.
Skip over him.
I do want to just add one thing to what Zach said. As it stands right now, it might not be that hard to outscore the Chargers. So, if you score 20, you might be
also going to be trying to win games.
It looks like
with Bowers at the 108. If you're a rebuilding team, your timeline's a little bit farther out. I'm cool with it. If you're a competitive team, I think there's other options at the 108 that are probably better for your team.
Yeah.
Speaking of the 108, Michael Penix Jr. getting drafted by the Atlanta Falcons after giving Kirk Cousins the bag, tampering or not. My least favorite pick
I
of the first round so far. Brock Bowers Jr. was a close second for me as far as least favorite, but I mean, he's already 24 years old. By the time he sees the field, barring Kirk getting injured, which up until this past year, he had not missed a game to injury. I did say that on the podcast before. Obviously, he was not a starter when he came into the league. He was a later pick. Robert Griffin III was there, blah, blah, blah. I don't like this. In the first round, you want a guy that can at least come in and contribute right away. Holding a clipboard is not really contributing to either the Falcons or our fantasy teams. So I do not like this pick. Guys, are we in agreement here? We did not like
I'm
this
gonna
pick.
let you guys go because I think you guys are more passionate about this than I am.
I just absolutely my least favorite pick as well. And there's some picks I don't like as much, but this one just makes so little sense for an NFL franchise in general, as well as fantasy. Because like, what is, and if you want to like Michael Penix, say be my guest. But at the end of the day, what is this going to do for your fantasy team anytime soon?
Nothing.
What would it have done if he was drafted elsewhere? Now that's up for debate and, is alternate universe stuff. But yeah, it felt really early for me in general as a pick. Didn't like Penix as a prospect, but now we have all this drama of like, and I'm glad as much as we don't want to, pub NFL draft pundits, but everybody's ripping this pick as they should. They, instead of helping the team in any way, they just, we'll do some estate planning for when a new GM has a problem. And,
next week. Yeah, next week. Because you know what? Look, I understand people might be sitting here thinking, if you're a Michael Penix fan, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. NFL GMs have been wrong. The draft pundits, like Bob had mentioned, these guys are wrong too. Teams get it wrong all the time. Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, none of these guys are on the original team that drafted them. So we're wrong. They're wrong. I didn't like this pick. Zach, I know you didn't like it. You kept mentioning it all night, how much you hated the pick. And I do agree. What are your thoughts here?
Well, here's a different way to look at it, right? They keep comparing this to the Falcons to the Jordan Love situation. Well, first of all, Jordan Love was 21 when he was drafted and came from Utah State, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Not quite the competition that you're playing in some of these other conferences.
Outside the 100.
Right.
So
100. 21 years old versus 24 years old. Second thing was Jordan Love was selected at the back end of the first round. So a developmental prospect needs time to sit and learn, which I'm a big fan of quarterbacks sitting and learning for a year at minimum. What you take away from the Falcons here is a team that has every opportunity to win that division.
Yep. Sure.
You take away the opportunity to add a top 10 talent and possibly the first defensive player selected in this draft on a team that desperately needed defensive help. So that has nothing to do with fantasy. That the reason why I hate it is because the real life implications make no sense. Even if Michael Penix works out as a pro prospect, a la Jordan Love, you can never debunk the argument that the Packers could have helped Aaron Rodgers win a championship by adding a top 25 piece 3-4 years ago. Yes, you set yourself up with a quarterback, phenomenal. But what did you take away from Aaron Rodgers' ability to win a championship that year? You can make that argument for Kirk Cousins now to an even higher degree because it's the 8th overall pick, which is incrementally higher.
Rome, Odunze. I mean, not even defense. They also
Yeah.
passed on a top wide receiver that they could have added to their offense.
So it just, and then fantasy speaking, I mean, he's unplayable for 2 years.
Yeah.
So you are, just as the Falcons are not helping themselves in the next 2 years, unless there's some kind of an injury, you are not helping your fantasy team in the next 2 years, unless there's some kind of injury to Kirk Cousins.
Maybe this should be one of our favorite picks because, as we said immediately after the pick,
First round fodder.
That's a good point.
Because there are going to be a lot of people that put on their rose-colored lenses that are turned up way too high, and I guess this is the guy now, and there's just no chance outside of injury. Obviously, that comes into play. But also something I touched on too in pre-recording discussions is when you talk about bringing a player into red shirt, let's say, or sit behind an established vet, you're talking about 21-year-olds. You're talking about 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, guys that haven't had as much reps and time to learn the game. Yes, college is obviously different from the NFL, but you're asking this 24-year-old now who should be, in my opinion, if he's cut out for the NFL, he should be able to play right now. And if he's cut out to play right now, sure, maybe he's a great quality backup. But, you're not, like you touched on, you're not playing to win with your picks here. And again, you touched on too, even higher pick than the Packers was. It's a lot of poor justification because honestly, like if they would have made this with JJ McCarthy, I think we're probably having a different discussion. As much as we'd hate that pick too, because we like JJ here.
Mm-hmm.
If that would have been the pick, there's a lot of different things that come into place. Sure, he had better competition that he was facing too, and he thrived against that competition. But at least it's you're molding a young quarterback, not
just turned 21,
not somebody who can almost rent a car and all this, and might be filing for Social Security sometime soon. We don't know.
Well, there's a comment here that says maybe Cousins isn't recovering from the injury. Okay, well then you don't guarantee him $90 million over the next 2 years.
I mean,
you don't do that if you think your quarterback is not
way,
recovering.
Either way, this is a poor systematic move by the front office. And then there's the tampering stuff that I think, Mike, you alluded to, that maybe there's some suspension coming or some kind of draft capital takeaway that they're kind of estate planning for. It doesn't justify the move.
No.
It doesn't do it.
And talking about him not recovering from the injury, you could have just kept Desmond Ridder on a rookie contract. He was cheap until Kirk is ready to play. Honestly, that would have been
what would if you're not planning to start Ridder anyway, in general, like you're not starting Penix, that would have been a much more savvy move, or one GM that should have a job move would make, maybe. But
Right. Let's move on from Michael Penix. We'll hate on him later, but his teammate at Washington goes next, number 9th overall, to the Chicago Bears. Rome Odunze. Nate, is this your favorite pick of the draft?
It's not my favorite pick of the draft. I don't love the landing spot. I think it's just totally fine, if not great long term, because I think Caleb Williams is an incredible prospect, and Rome Odunze is his wide receiver 1 in a couple years. Keenan Allen is there. DJ Moore is there. Cole Kmet is there. DeAndre Swift is there with a rookie quarterback. So, this is another situation where the landing spot long-term is not bad, but the short-term production is going to take a hit. Yeah. As much as I love Rome Odunze, he's only the wide receiver 3 to start this year. And talking about a wide receiver who could be a wide receiver 1 in a different draft class, being the wide receiver 3 for a team, is such a luxury pick for the Bears. But you also look at it, Keenan Allen is there. They traded for him. He's a free agent after this year. DJ Moore is there. He has 2 years left on his deal, but they could actually cut him for 0 dead cap after this season and save $16.5 million. Now, I don't think they're going to do that, because I would be more than happy to keep DJ Moore on my team if I was the Bears. There's no reason to cut him. But he still only has 2 years left on his deal. Keenan's going to be gone most likely after this year. So at least Rome can step into that wide receiver 2 role for Caleb Williams in the Bears offense next season. I think this is still a great pick, to invest in long-term. But, kind of same thing with Nabers. If you're looking for year 1 production from these wide receivers, I don't know what we're going to get outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. Even the guys picked later, maybe a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. even has better production than a Rome Odunze this year, just because of the situation, not because Brian Thomas Jr. is a better wide receiver than Rome Odunze, but just because of how those box scores are going to play themselves out. What do you guys think of the Rome pick?
Before we move on, real quick, Nolan made a comment, draft isn't over. Maybe they flip Penix. I don't know if you could do that. He hasn't signed his rookie contract yet. I don't know if you could do that.
You trade the pick, but no, there's no way. And we saw reports come out too to rehash people trying to trade into the top 10 allegedly to get Penix. And you can't tell me that this GM deserves a job if they did not pick up the phone and say, oh, wow, you're offering us a lot to trade down 5 picks to get somebody that'll actually help our roster and not overdraft a position, the most not overpaid backup, but certainly a rich price to pay for a backup. There's just no, I don't think. And if you're doing that, that's like, fantasy tactics of like, oh, I'm going to draft this guy for the purpose to trade him. Like, you don't do that in the NFL. You don't do that in fantasy drafts. If that was the justification, even less reason for him to have a job. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not saying I'm qualified to be an NFL GM, but this guy ain't either.
There is the potential.
Not the viewer, I'm sorry.
There is the potential. They thought they were in a super flex league.
That is
It
true.
happens.
I love that meme.
Bob, what are your thoughts on Rome Odunze here?
I like it. I echo a lot of what Nate has to say. There's only so much an offense can do, and this is one that again pumps up Caleb Williams. With the addition of adding yet another weapon, getting that weapon for Jordan Love, like the Packers did last year. These are the notes that the Falcons should be taking from Green Bay, is adding weapons for your quarterback. Not, they're just a few years ahead of the, a few years when they're, drafting Penix's successor, they'll draft some weapons, I guess, but or whatever. I don't know. But either which way, I'm a fan of it. I think exactly you have to play the long game again. Another one that I think you're going to see fall down boards because it's not an appealing landing spot, but one I think where we can see Rome make the ascension to the wide receiver one on the team within 1.5 to 2 years, and even if maybe they don't let Keenan Allen walk, maybe they keep him on a more friendly deal, who knows? But you also have to factor in, as much as we don't want to, preface or predict when players are going to fall off, because we always get it wrong almost. At some point, Keenan Allen is not going to be as good at football as he is currently. I know he just came off a career
32
year.
years old tomorrow.
He'll be 32 tomorrow. Happy
I wish I
birthday,
turned
Keenan
32.
Allen. You are not
Instead of
watching.
40.
But happy birthday to you, good sir. I wish you prosperity. But at the end of the day, I like it long term, but obviously short term, there's some hiccups to be had.
Zach?
Yeah, I think everything you guys have said is spot on. This is a landing spot that I've warmed up to a little bit. I do feel comfortable with it. And you've seen the rapport with Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze prior to the draft.
They're best buds.
Yeah, them flying and that's what you want to see, right? Like,
Yeah, sure.
There is a world where Rome Odunze is his favorite go-to target in year one, right? That exists. So
We'll be in rookie camp together. So
yeah, some of the other players in that offense, I'd be
They're
trying
going to
to
have
move off
breakfast together,
Yeah.
which
That worked out
obviously the most important thing.
Maybe they'll paint each other's nails. Who knows?
Okay.
that's possible.
But yeah, it's a landing spot that doesn't turn me off to picking Rome Odunze. I would not let him fall down my draft boards. I'd be selecting Rome Odunze
Still in the same spot.
before I select potentially even Jayden McDaniels.
McDaniels.
Daniels. I got Mike McDaniel in my head. Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye as well.
Interesting.
Right,
I like
so-
it. I don't hate it because I think one of the graphics that's been floating around this entire draft process is the quarterbacks remaining from, what was it, the 21 class, whatever Trevor Lawrence's class was, that Trevor Lawrence is the last man standing out of that entire class.
Yeah.
So, quarterbacks, are ultimately at the end of the day a crapshoot, and wide receivers that are really stinking good tend to be really stinking good in the NFL. And I think Rome Odunze is really stinking good. So I'm happy making the pick in the same range he was going. I think I would consider, especially depending on my situation in the league, looking at Rome Odunze earlier than those quarterbacks as well, possibly depending on obviously team constructed things like that.
All right. So the next pick in the draft, JJ McCarthy goes 10th overall to the Minnesota Vikings. My favorite draft selection of the evening. This was the landing spot I wanted for him. Justin Jefferson there, but let's not forget he still has to get past Sam Darnold. Nate, what do you think?
Tough one there. I've been a big fan of JJ for the last couple months, and I've been selecting him. I remember back in February when the hype train was not quite out yet, but there was some rumors circulating that he would be a first-round pick. I jumped on the train right away. I drafted him at the 108. I was talking about how this was extending that top 7 to a top 8 because JJ McCarthy was going to be a first-round quarterback. JJ McCarthy was a first-round quarterback, and he went to one of the best landing spots for any quarterback in this draft outside of the Bears. And throwing to Justin Jefferson, throwing to Jordan Addison, having TJ Hawkinson back when he's healthy, Aaron Jones now there. He's a great veteran out of the backfield.
And Kevin O'Connell.
Probably
one of the biggest.
One of definitely the biggest factors in development of a quarterback is the coaching staff and how they set him up for success. And we've seen Kevin O'Connell has done that before. I expect him to do that with JJ McCarthy here. I think McCarthy is a good quarterback. Watching the tape, I know he didn't have a lot of raw statistics. He wasn't asked to carry the team, carry the offense, but he didn't need to. And, with this Vikings team, he's going to have to be asked to do a bit more. But he's throwing to Jordan Addison, he's throwing to Justin Jefferson. I think those wide receivers are going to help his transition into the NFL. He's still a very good quarterback. He can throw really well on the run. He's really accurate. And he is so good on third down.
Mhm.
He's so good at keeping the offense on the field, and that is going to pay dividends not just for the team and win in the win-loss column, but also in his stats. As he can keep the team out there longer, he can be more efficient. He's going to help that offense be more efficient and grow. And I like what the Vikings are doing. They're really investing first-round talent into that team. They're going to surround JJ McCarthy. They've already done it with offensive talent. Like I said, the best landing spot next to the Bears here. I think McCarthy being in the same tier for me as Maye and Daniels, when you take a step back with the best landing spot, I don't see why he can't be the quarterback too off the board.
Yeah, I tend to agree. My favorite landing spot. You look at all these weapons that you touched on, the college production lacking, but the efficiency that we like to see and all the things on film that you like to see too, like I said, ball placement, arm talent, mobile ability, not the biggest rusher, but he can escape pressure. He can do all of those things. Yep. It's a good bit. And yeah, I would say probably pushing for quarterback 2 with the landing spot. And I would say that this is the best quarterback landing spot with all of those factors, as much as, there's plenty going on in Chicago. I like what McCarthy's got ahead of him. I have positive thoughts. So
Yeah, I think coaching staff makes a difference there. I mean, talent-wise, I prefer Caleb Williams over JJ McCarthy.
Oh, for sure.
What I like, not fantasy-related about this, is the Vikings didn't really have to move up. They did move up one spot, but they didn't have to go to 4 to get McCarthy. They didn't put their team in a hole draft pick-wise. Now, they are
the first
kind
next
of,
year.
yeah.
They are kind of
There's
in
a
a
lot
hole
of
from
draft
other
capital,
moves they
but
made.
yeah.
But to make this specific move, they didn't have to do that because this didn't require the other first-round pick that they got, which then required a second-round pick next year. So I like that they did that. They were able to basically stay put and make sure nobody jumped in front of them to take McCarthy by moving up one spot. But I mean, you may not like JJ McCarthy because of his lack of production, but what you can say is he did what he was asked to do, and he did it very well. And now he comes into a situation with so much talent on that offense around him with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. We can even throw Aaron Jones in there. There might be another running back drafted for the Vikings. So there's so much talent around him that really helps out. But to me, the difference maker is, as Bob said, is Kevin O'Connell. I would much rather have Kevin O'Connell versus Cliff Kingsbury as my quarterback guru for my team.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that is the difference maker of why I truly believe, and I'm having a hard time accepting this, that I have moved personally JJ McCarthy to my quarterback too. I'm having a very hard time accepting it, but I just have to face the reality of what the situation is. And I think it's a perfect situation, talent-wise, coach-wise, situation-wise, for a quarterback of JJ McCarthy, who's not like the sexiest quarterback we've ever seen on tape. But again, the landing spot, the situation, the coaching staff all helps to me make that decision.
The narrative is really interesting, especially with the narrative going around with Caleb Williams, where he had to play so much hero ball that it became a negative. And this is like the anti of that, where JJ McCarthy didn't have to play any hero ball, and he took care of the ball. And that's bad.
Nope, we need middle.
It's bad that he did what he was supposed to do. And we need to understand the context of these offenses, the context of these stats, why Caleb Williams was playing hero ball the entire time. He did not have the offense that you would expect a Lincoln Riley offense to have.
The defense.
Or the defense at all. I mean,
should have
a bottom 20 defense that entire season last year. So, and then the opposite, Michigan having one of the best defenses in the entire nation, and then also one of the best running games. So, just because he wasn't asked to do it, I think we saw on tape that he could do it when he was asked, when he was called upon. And I think that the NFL is going to be a not hard transition for him, maybe not a super easy transition for him, but he's got the pieces around him to make it easier.
I think the big disconnect is while he didn't do it, you can't draw the line to can't.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's an argument there, I'll 100% agree as somebody who is a fiend for college production and liking to see that in my prospects. There's plenty of college prospects who produced a ton in college and did nothing.
True.
Yep. And then there's plenty who did not a ton in college and did something in the NFL. JJ McCarthy kind of falls in the middle of the row out of 153 quarterbacks looked at, so could go either way. But I think the situation around him, he would have to be pretty terrible to not be a long-term quarterback for this team, in my opinion, barring anything absolutely outlandish. So I love.
Does this solidify Justin Jefferson's deal getting done? Him staying?
I think that was probably the hang up of them getting a quarterback, and I have to think that this does work a deal at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe we hear it after draft week.
All right, we got a super chat here, and Sean, if you want to put that up on the screen, it's from David Williams. Superflex rebuild with no quarterbacks. He owns a 102, 109, and the 110. Likely only Knicks. Penix will be available at 109. Do I pick quarterback 2 there, trade up, or get QB2 next year?
Here comes down to not knowing who to draft, but who not to. Do not draft Michael Penix at either of those picks, in my opinion.
I agree.
100% look at Knicks. If you can get a quarterback at 102, is that a discussion that we're having? Or are we thinking about, Wood? No. You think him?
No.
I think so too. I just wanted to.
Unless Marvin Harrison goes 1-1.
Which, hey, I think there will be drafts where that happens. So maybe you lock up Caleb and you get a Knicks later. And who knows? Maybe there's JJ haters in your draft.
Maybe the solution here is draft Marvin Harrison at the 102, and can you trade the 109 and 110 for a starting quarterback that is currently in the NFL?
No, I don't think you do that. I think you take what's there and call it a day, because you get to wait on that rookie production. This team is just started a rebuild, I believe, or bare bones of a rebuild, as far as I can tell.
There's no quarterbacks. If
Okay.
there's no quarterbacks, then
Probably
not
pretty
competing
bare
this year.
bone.
Right?
So I mean, I'd say instead of taking somebody that already has some years on them, unless you're getting a stupid good deal, I'd say just take Knicks. I think I'd be pretty happy with that personally. Definitely don't want Penix. Let somebody else take on that burden. Let somebody do that public service for you instead.
What I do with a team like this too is I try to see if you could pull those short-term starters off the scrap heap, like Sam Darnold, whoever's going to be the guy in Las Vegas, and then can you flip them later for some sort of player or draft capital in the future? And Benjamin has a question. Why do people play Superflex? Serious question. Because it's awesome.
I think
I love it.
What it does in fantasy is it just puts that much more value on the quarterback
Yes.
position, because in the NFL, the quarterback position is so much more valuable. How I look at Superflex or 2 quarterback league compared to 1 quarterback is that Superflex slot plus my quarterback is 1 quarterback. And how good that is how it stacks up to the rest of the league. That's how I've always looked at it. Not necessarily it's 2 quarterbacks, but it's this megamorph of JJ McCarthy and Caleb Williams now, if you have 2 early picks in Superflex. But that's always been my preference. Hey, play the leagues you want. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. But touching back on the roster question, if you want some help with roster reviews, or if you'd like your roster reviewed, want some help knowing the moves to make to improve that roster, get you through that rebuild that much faster, check out the link in the YouTube description box for sure. And we get you sorted on that.
And while you're on PayHip, go ahead and pre-order the rookie draft guide. Might as well while you're there. We got another super chat question, and this is from Logan. Yes, thank you, Logan. Superflex with AR and Bryce. Am I wrong taking JJ at 103 based off safe landing spot? I know 104 loves JJ too.
If you can't get them to bite on a trade up that is lucrative, just take JJ, in my opinion, because the quarterbacks you have, if you had Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, I would think no. But any other myriad of quarterbacks, I'll happily take JJ. Or if you know 104, that's knowing your league mates. Huge thing to know for your rookie drafts.
Very important.
Hey, if you can get a silly trade done in your benefit, by all means. And if you want some help with that too, to pub some more help, get in the Discord. Free 7-day trial. A lot of rookie drafts are going to be happening soon. Get in there, check that out. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Link is in the description box as well. Other thoughts, gentlemen?
You could also just draft JJ and then try and make a trade.
For sure.
Because the 104 might think you're bluffing.
Well, for sure. And absolutely, if that's somebody you like, I always say if you're going to do something like that and make it somebody that you already like, that you're comfortable drafting, and just saying like,
of course,
hey man, I'm not bluffing. My chips are in. If you want this guy, come get him.
Yep.
We can make a deal, but this is what it is. And honestly, it might even put more power in your.
Gives you a bit more leverage, because it's like, hey, I like this guy. I don't have to.
Done deal. Draft that offer.
Yeah.
He sends you your first offer. You send him a counter. He sends one back. Draft the guy. Okay, send me your real offer. That's how that interaction can go.
All right. So Logan, thank you very much. Let's move on.
Yes.
Move on to pick 12. Bo Nix from Oregon goes to the Denver Broncos. Nate, is this your favorite pick of the draft?
I really like the JJ McCarthy pick, but we kind of knew that was coming. The Bo Nix pick is probably my other favorite pick because last year I was calling Bo Nix as a dark horse, first round sleeper, and it came to fruition. Sean Payton got his guy. He was a quarterback 6 off the board, which, incredible that we had 6 quarterbacks go off in the first round. But I think Bo Nix his skill set just fits with how Sean Payton runs an offense. There was talk of Bo Nix being a little bit of like a Drew Brees with more mobility. I think we've also heard that from like Brock Purdy as well. His processing ability is just really impressive. He can make all the throws. I know he had a very low ADOT while he was at Oregon, but that was just because of the offensive system that they ran there. They wanted to get the ball out of his hands really quick. But when he was at Auburn, he's got, the big arm. He can make the escape plays, the off-platform plays. He can extend the pocket. He can do all of those things when he needs to. But putting him in a system where he can make the quick throws, get the ball out of his hands, I think he'd be pretty productive. Year one production, maybe not super great. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Greg Dulcich, not an all-star offense right there. So there's some work to be done with the Broncos offense. But I think Bo Nix, getting that first-round draft capital shows the investment, shows us that he has some time to, grow into that offense, let that offense grow around him as well. So I'm really excited about Bo Nix. He's a first-round pick in my rookie drafts for sure. I like him as a competitive team, getting him as my quarterback 3. They don't really have anyone right there that's going to be a bridge quarterback. So it seems like Bo Nix is probably going to start right away. I don't think Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson are going to be starting ahead of Bo Nix.
You don't think Ben DiNucci's going to throw his
probably
hat
not
in the
Ben
ring?
DiNucci. So, when you have a 24-year-old quarterback like Bo Nix, I want him starting in the NFL right away. I think he's had 5 years of college. He was a freshman starter at Auburn in the SEC. He had been talked about as a possible Heisman candidate after his freshman year. He's been talented for a very long time. He has a ton of game experience. I do love this pick. This is my favorite pick in the draft.
Beautiful.
The first round.
Yeah, I'm also a big Bo Nix fan. And to touch on the ADOT, we need to stop getting in the habit of like, well, this one stat really bad. And, this is what you're told to do in the offense. You're told to read the system. Hey, this is here. Take it. Take what's given to you. Don't, try to play hero ball. But if you watch Bo Nix play, man, the guy, has the athletic ability, has the throwing ability. While not maybe the most elite cannon of an arm, he's got plenty of arm to put the ball where it needs to go.
Sure.
He's not throwing the ball downfield 50 times a game. That's just not how, especially Sean Payton's going to play. I like this spot a good bit too, not as much as the McCarthy pick because of all the surrounding elements. But this was a fun pick. Love seeing our guy go. And like you said, 5 years of production since the starter, being your first true freshman starter at first-year true freshman starter at Auburn. I love this pick. I love that he got first-round draft capital. Not even like a dark horse pick. He didn't even like squeak into the. No. He kicked the door in.
12th overall.
First round, 12th overall. Mel Kiper said they all went too early, but hey, I'll take my boy going here. I like the spot. Like that he's going to get some run early.
Well, who I really like this for, Bob, is somebody we talked about a couple weeks ago, is Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin as well. Because I think those two are going to benefit from this as well. There's not as many pass catchers as Nate highlighted there, unless it's, what is that, Brandon Johnson, right? Is that the other guy that's there?
Marvin Mims?
Who's
Brandon
John Humphrey? Lil John Humphrey?
Isn't it Lil Jordan?
I'm sure they're going to be taking. I'm sure the Broncos are going to be looking at a wide receiver, but the thing is, they have a third round pick. Not sure what their day 3 draft capital looks like, but they can probably pick up a wide receiver 3 sometime in day 3.
But somebody I was monitoring the Denver situation prior to the draft. Again, I had this conversation with Bob, was Javonte Williams. And I think this is a good pick for Javonte Williams. A, I think they're going to run the ball just as much as they did last year. And B, he might get some of those dump offs from Bo Nix. So in terms of the Bo Nix pick, I don't know how to feel about this one yet. It's obviously a good landing spot for him to go there with Sean Payton. The only thing about Sean Payton is I've only seen him succeed with Drew Brees. And so that's where I'm like, okay, is Sean Payton the quarterback guru that we think? Or was Drew Brees the one that made Sean Payton, where we do the Bill Belichick and Tom Brady thing? That's where I get a little concerned about Sean. So I'm not on Sean Payton as I am Kevin O'Connell. Other guys like Cliff Kingsbury, so on and so forth.
I'll take it over a defensive-minded head coach with a very 100%. Suspect OC. Like, not that I'm saying don't take Caleb Williams as early as we are, but, Caleb Williams has Shane Waldron, who just proved last year that he can't run an offense with 3 competent wide receivers. Another reason why to, not really like that offense, or at least piece of that offense outside of Caleb, early on. But yeah, I still like the Bo Nix pick a good bit. I think he's a super talented player.
Well, the next pick was Brock Bowers at pick 13 overall. The Raiders, we've touched on that
at
one
point.
before. So let's move on. We're going all the way to pick number 23 now. We get a skill position player. Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's your Calvin Ridley replacement.
This is one of the better fits in the first round.
I like
for
it.
sure. Christian Kirk, such a good receiver, playing out of the slot for the Jaguars, and then you have Brian Thomas taking over that X role. I guess that leaves Zay Jones to play the flanker. I'm not sure. Maybe they can switch because they can both play
Davis.
Gabe Davis playing the flanker, that
Yeah,
deep threat. Seems
Zay's
maybe a little
good.
repetitive there actually, because Brian Thomas, most of his production came on post routes and go routes. So I do think Brian Thomas Jr. is better than Gabe Davis, though. And I think, Trevor Lawrence is a very, very good quarterback. And I like that they're surrounding him with weapons. I think, Trevor Lawrence has got a huge arm and can take advantage of Brian Thomas Jr. He was thrown to guys like T. Higgins, Justin Ross in college. He's used to having a stud wide receiver and being able to get him the ball. I think we're going to see that. And with both Kirk and Thomas, I think both these guys can coexist and be productive. So I'm buying back into the Jaguars offense slowly but surely. I think that team has some issues overall, but for fantasy football, I think they're trending up.
I think the hiccup for me a little bit is that Press Taylor is still the OC there, right?
I believe so.
And he is sus.
Yeah, but it's really Doug Peterson's offense. He
Okay.
calls the plays. Press Taylor is
He's
kind of
the
just
puppet.
like the puppet
Okay.
figurehead
All
offensive
right, yeah,
coordinator.
because that's a hiccup I have because we haven't seen a great offense under.
Also,
Press
that was the
Taylor.
reason that Doug Peterson got fired in Philadelphia. They wanted to let Press Taylor go. He insisted, and they're like, "You're
Silly.
gone."
But either way, no, I think 100% Nate, you nailed it. 2 years back before Christian Kirk got injured last year, missed most of the year, a good chunk of the year, was the leading slot snap taker, I guess, in the entire NFL. So it took the most snaps from the slot. That's probably the better way to say that. But Brian Thomas going to play outside primarily. It's a good blend. You have your 1, 2, and 3 in the offense in terms of where they're lining up. Your XYZ, I should say. I think this good fit as any. I'm pretty pro on the landing spot.
Yeah,
for
I don't
sure.
think this hurts Kirk at all. I think it even helps him. He doesn't have to be the number one
agree.
offensive target
True.
for the defense to look at. And with both Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas being able to test the defenses deep, it's going to open up a lot of space underneath for Christian Kirk and
PPR.
Evan Ingram.
PPR.
and
Yeah.
Travis Etienne.
And Travis Etienne.
True.
Or
Stocks.
Tank Bigsby.
Tank Bigsby.
There it is.
baby.
There it is. Our first
the
Tank Bigsby
revival, but
sighting.
100% too. Trevor Lawrence gets a huge bump out of this too. I think this is an awesome move for him.
Sad for Parker Washington.
Yeah,
It's all right.
yeah.
He's
I
good-
loved Parker Washington.
Me
good
too.
receiver,
Me
though.
too.
He's a good
He's
backup,
the
and
backup
maybe
for Kirk.
maybe he's the long-term Kirk solution.
That is a good possibility. Yeah. But Zach, what are your thoughts on the Brian
I,
Thomas?
there's not much I can add to this other than what these two fine gentlemen have said. This is a really good fit, by the way. This is an offense that needed this, and Trevor Lawrence needed this. Somebody who's going into a very critical year in his career. We've had this discussion about that draft class and those quarterbacks, and Trevor Lawrence is the lone standing survivor from that draft class. And this is a pivotal year for Trevor Lawrence and his development. So they needed to go out and get that wide receiver. There was a lot of talks about them potentially moving up, but they ended up moving back. And that factors into this draft pick. They picked up a 3 and a
Sure.
4 next year.
You got the guy they wanted.
Yeah. And just move back 6 spots. Like, this is something I think teams should do more. The Dallas Cowboys did it. They moved back from 24 to 29. They picked
All
up
in,
another
baby.
3rd round pick. That's Jalen Wright right there. That's your starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I thought it was a phenomenal pick and phenomenal execution of moving back, still getting your guy and picking up additional capital. They got 3 additional picks, 2 next year and 1 this year, and still got Brian Thomas. So it's a great fit and a great job by the Jaguars organization to make that all happen.
Take
Beautiful.
notes, Falcons.
We got to pause for a moment. I
Very
got to
fun.
open up my seltzer. There
Oh.
we go.
That was beautiful. All right. So our next offensive skill position player, we go to pick number 28, Buffalo Bills. They trade with their playoff rivals, the Kansas City Chiefs, and they pick up Xavier Worthy. So, hey, remember, I'm always saying beware of the good offense bump. Xavier Worthy gets that now. Fastest player in the draft. Couple drop issues, some hands issues at times. It can be fixed, of course. What are you guys' thoughts on Xavier Worthy? Nate, let's start with you. What are we doing?
Well, I'm going to throw it to Zach first because Zach always gets last. So he's always like, oh, Bob and Nate did a great job. Well, let's hear Zach
All right,
first. Let's
Zach,
see what
go
Zach's
ahead.
got to say.
On the spot.
I mean, this is, to me, I know that we just talked about Brian Thomas and how great of a fit is. I think this is a really good fit for Patrick Mahomes, for the Chiefs, and for Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy was somebody prior to this process that I'm like, I don't know how interested I'm gonna be in having a lot of shares. You're gonna be able to get him now at the end of the first round, and he's in a landing spot with Patrick Mahomes where they have opportunity. They need pass catchers. Now, the joke to me is, hey, look, the Chiefs got another wide receiver who can't catch. But I think Nate did a really good job of displaying the difference between the Xavier Worthy drops and the Brian Thomas drops in one of our discussions the other day. So I like this for the Chiefs. And they moved up with the Bills. Like,
No.
that's the irony of that, right?
They're just trying to get some luck to rub off on them a little bit.
And the thing that they did, again, this matters to me. The thing that they did, and this has nothing to do with fantasy, but it's the real life implications, is they didn't give up any draft capital to do it. They just moved back in 2 later rounds. They moved back, I think, in the 4th and 5th to the 5th and the 6th, or something like that. They didn't give up any additional capital to move up to go and get their guy. There's obviously a need with whatever's happening with Rashee Rice, whether you think it's 2 games, whether you think it's 4 or 6 games. There's obviously some concerns about Rashee Rice off the field as well. But I think this is a great fit for Patrick Mahomes, for the Chiefs. The comp that everybody's making is Tyreek Hill, obviously. But I think for where you're going to be able to draft Xavier Worthy in your rookie drafts, which is the end of the first round, it makes all the sense in the world. This is not overreaching on Sky Moore like it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
This is not, I think a lot of people kind of maybe potentially overdrafted Rashee Rice even last year a little bit. We can have that discussion another day. I think this is an appropriate position where you'd be able to draft Xavier Worthy because he is a first round wide receiver.
I hate this pick because I have been in on Xavier Worthy for a minute now. I've overlooked the drops because I think they're overblown. Yes, he has a good number of drops, but he has it over a ton of targets, a ton of work. Drop percentage is lower than somebody like Brian Thomas. I know you brought up the differences in how the drops occurred, which absolutely matters. But at the end of the day, this is not Sky Moore from a talent perspective, from a level of competition perspective, from a production perspective. This is not Sky Moore. The why I hate this pick is there were all these painted reasons why Xavier Worthy is a bust. And now he's going to go here and everybody's like, well, maybe he's not that bad. He's on the Chiefs. If anybody can fix him, it's the Chiefs. Xavier Worthy doesn't need fixing. He needs as much development as any wide receiver entering the NFL. I love this team fit. I hate what this does in terms of the fantasy realm because too many people were bashing Worthy for unworthy reasons, if you ask me. So I love this pick. I love the fit. I'm happy for the player. And to, just touch again to, the production profiles I got going on. Xavier Worthy in my grading, 77th percentile production score. That takes into consideration how much production he had, raw production that equates to fantasy points, not taking any analytics into account, against an A+ strength of schedule grade, which means he always had a top 25 strength of season schedule through every year of his career. And you forget, we want to do this game of, well, Xavier Worthy, he did really well his freshman year and then, tapered off. And it's like, he still had really good production that any wide receiver in this class should be jealous to have, in my opinion, besides maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. But all in all, love this pick. And, just to relate that back to Sky Moore, somebody who's below 20th percentile.
Zach, I don't know if you're going to be able to pick up Xavier Worthy as late as you think you are. You get the Chiefs bump. Everyone always gets the Chiefs bump. And he's also the fastest man in the NFL, according to our testing.
Live
Ever.
And, maybe with the more locked in dynasty players, you're going to have him still outside of the top 6, top 7. But in the more casual dynasty players, they're going to see 4-2-1 and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and first round draft capital. And I think we're going to see Xavier Worthy well within the top 6 at times in rookie drafts. There's definitely going to be drafts where you can pick him up at the late first. But with the landing spots of Odunze, with the landing spot of Nabers, I think there's a chance that we'll see Worthy go off as the wide receiver 2, 3, 4 many times. Maybe not too often as the wide receiver 2, but I think you'll see him as the 3 or 4 relatively often with how this wide receiver talent kind of played out with the landing spots.
I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. Just to because I wanted to make sure I had the percentage right on Sky Moore's production score. 19th percentile. So I said 20th.
Oh, great.
So I was pretty close. Not bad, but still not great in that term. So,
all right. So we got 2 more offensive skill position players that got selected. Don't forget, if you have any questions, super chats do get prioritized. 31st overall. We don't know who's going to be on the move, but the San Francisco 49ers select Ricky Pearsall from Florida by way of Arizona State. I've not been the biggest Ricky Pearsall fan.
Hey.
I've made that known. And just because he got first round draft capital, hey, Jalen Reagor got first round draft capital too. But I'm still not in on Ricky Pearsall. Sorry. I liked him in traffic, but I didn't think he was that special athletically. I don't think I will have any Ricky Pearsall.
On the field, to clarify, not necessarily because athletic testing,
Yes,
he's
I'm sorry.
objectively very good.
His
but
testing was
on
great.
the field, not as athletic and things of that sort. Go ahead.
Correct. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate
just
it.
wanted to clarify.
Yeah. So the film I saw, wasn't the biggest fan, but yeah, he tested great. He looked good in shorts.
Yep. I think Pearsall is, I've come around on him recently. Not as like a top 5 wide receiver.
Yeah,
as of a couple weeks ago.
No,
but
I
at
know.
11
Last
p.m.
night
he came
especially,
around
too.
on him.
So with Pearsall for me, I had him coming into last night as like the wide receiver 9, 10 on my board. So higher a little bit than maybe the 2 of you guys, but but not like a top 6 receiver. I certainly did not expect him to be a first round pick.
No.
I think we need to see what's happening in San Francisco before I really have a good feel on where I want to draft him. Until we see either Debo or Ayuk move away. I'm definitely not interested in Pearsall as a wide receiver 3. I don't think that's going to be his role there. They wouldn't draft someone in the first round to be the wide receiver 3. I don't think.
I mean, there's people out there drafting quarterbacks in the first round to be their quarterback too.
The 49ers have picked 63 overall. I think there's a good possibility that he could have been there, or they could have moved up in the second
I
round.
don't think so at all.
Maybe they could have moved up in the second round.
I don't think they had to
Whatever.
take him at 31.
30 something. Yeah. I think he would have gone in the first 10 picks of the second round.
He definitely had a lot of love.
Yeah.
Coming into the draft cycle or the NFL draft week process, to say the least. I think the biggest hinge for me on this is I can get down with Pearsall. I like him enough as a player, as a prospect, everything like that. I do have questions. I don't love, 5th-year players. Not a fan. Didn't have a ton of production in college either, albeit he was playing pretty strong schedules.
There's also Arizona State, which at the time did not have a good quarterback in Jayden Daniels.
Whisper.
That is true.
But so something to think about for sure. But I can get down with this enough because, like I said, I believe enough in the talent. What I've seen on film, obviously athletic testing wise, elite. But there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And what this move does for me is really putting them in a position where it's like, you got to trade one of these guys. You can't keep rolling with Ayuk and Debo. Something's going to click. I think coming into day 2, especially, is more the range that Debo will be traded pick wise. And maybe they get a pick straight up for Debo this year. Maybe they get a pick in round 3 and maybe they pick up something else next year because of the money invested in Debo, the player value in general of his age. I think we could be looking at some day 2 pick.
The weird thing is that Pearsall seems more like a replacement for Ayuk than he does Debo.
He doesn't not, but I mean, you could always consider that, maybe this offense isn't as needed to be structured around Debo anymore with a CMC.
Doesn't need to be as gadgety anymore.
With a CMC in the
Yeah,
backfield.
It's true. CMC's there.
And
Kittle as well.
Kittle when healthy, sure. I think that I can absolutely get down with Pearsall, but I really want to see a move made with these other 2 wideouts.
But even if a move is made, Pearsall is the 4th target on that team. After
That's
whichever
fair.
wide receiver stays, after
Yeah.
Kittle, after
That's a
CMC.
really good point.
So even if he's in a great offense, he's a player that, we do believe has some upside. He's a good route runner. He's got good hands. He's decent, above decent athletically. He's still volume-wise, when we look at the box scores for the 49ers, he's not going to be one of the top 3 receivers most of the time.
Yeah.
So the production there is still limited.
I think 100% you're kind of, replacing one issue with another, but it does, for what it's worth, I think, if anything, provide more clarity to whatever wide receiver stays with San Fran. And it's like, if it's Ayuk, man, wheels way up because, yes, he's going to garner a lot more attention and whatnot, but the targets in that offense are going to be very nice. They're going to be high quality targets, and it's going to be. We know that offense is going to score points, and in fantasy, that usually helps your players out a good bit. But great point. He's Pearsall still with one of those guys moving well, better. Still, probably maybe has a decent chance of being overdrafted. I'm really curious to see where he'll start going in drafts, in rookie drafts. If anybody's had a draft yet, or even a mock draft since last night, I'm curious to see where Ricky Pearsall is going. If the value is higher on him than it should be.
I would have him as a second round pick. I wouldn't be picking him up in the first round.
Even if assuming somebody's moved.
Even if someone's moved, I'm not picking him up in the first round. I think there's too much other wide receiver talent in better landing spots for production. And like not even probably the early second as much as I have come around to Pearsall. I think once we get landing spots for Adonai Mitchell, for Ladd McConkey, for some of these running backs, it's going to be hard for me to pick up Pearsall over those guys just because of the situation. I think this might be one of those kind of better for the NFL than fantasy picks.
Yeah, I would say that's 100%.
Man, I kind of disagree.
Ooh, okay.
Here's the thing. Okay,
Better for fantasy than NFL.
If he's the fourth target on that offense, the fourth target on that offense last year was great, right? What was it? George Kittle who was a top 5 tight end last year.
But tight ends usually keep their targets. I think that the problem is he's not just going to replace if say Debo leaves. He's not just going to replace Debo's targets. He's not as good as Debo.
Sure.
If Ayuk leaves, he's not going to just replace Ayuk's targets in production. He's not as good as Ayuk. So that gap, right now, Ayuk and Debo are like right here together. Mm-hmm. If one of them leaves, that gap between that whoever stays and Pearsall, that gap is larger.
I got to think that they drafted him with something in mind, right? Not just a trade in mind, but some kind of utilization in mind, right? And let's look at a couple of things. Let's look down the road a little bit, and maybe this is where you start to discuss, hey, maybe you look at buying Pearsall in a year or two from now, but George Kittle's getting older, CMC is getting older. They're going to have to start. They're going to have to pay Brock Purdy at some point. So the money's going to start to shift, and their prioritization of their offensive weapons is going to shift. That money that's going to Debo and Kittle is not going to be available in 2 years if they want to keep Ayuk and if they want to pay Brock Purdy. So I got to imagine there's some kind of a plan for Ricky Pearsall. I love Ricky Pearsall. I might be the highest wide receiver on him. Like, am I going to judge Ricky Pearsall? Was it Graham Mertz was his quarterback, right? Is that what's going on?
Hey, Mertz is
I understand.
Good college quarterback.
He's a decent college
the Gators ran the ball more than they passed the ball. So it's hard for me to get a full sense of, his production profile wasn't there. Well, they prioritized running the ball in a lot of these games. And as you said, they did play some very stiff competition. But his ability, I love wide receivers that are able to get open. And I think that's a skill that translates to the league. And now we're talking about an offense that is a top 5 offense in the NFL. So I love, I've loved the profile of Ricky Pearsall, and I really like the landing spot. I agree with you. The production may not be what you want it to be the first year, but it is not scaring me away from drafting him at the top of the second round. I probably would not use a first round pick. I don't think you have to right now. I don't think people are over drafting Ricky Pearsall. I think you can get him 202 to 205, 206 area, and I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I don't hate that. Just to bring up the target distribution from last season for the top 4 target getters for San Fran. Brandon Ayuk had 120. Debo had 109. Christian McCaffrey had 104. And George Kittle rounded out with 101. That was all year, too. So that was with all their playoff games included. So you look at that spread. There, it's kind of razor thin margins. There's not a lot to go around. So that's
Pearsall maybe getting 80 targets at best if one of those guys move.
And for your fantasy leagues, that's probably the range you're looking at.
Maybe looking at like 55,
maybe
60 receptions.
We're
talking.
Let's do this right, Bob. Let's do this right.
Let's say one of those guys moves on. Pearsall goes off for 65 receptions, 650 yards, something like that. And 3 or 4 touchdowns. Basically, JSN season with the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's not scaring me away from drafting him.
I think that's the ceiling, but
knowing that I may not get this upper echelon of production in the first year, maybe even the second year, but you look 2-3 years down the road, which we're supposed to do in the dynasty snapshot. Is Debo going to be there? Is CMC may still be there, but he'll be 30 years old. And if he continues to play the way he did last year, he's going to have a lot of wear and tear on his body. So at some point, Ricky Pearsall starts to eat into those opportunities. Maybe not this year, but maybe in year 2 or year 3. And that's where you can get into the discussion of, do you buy Pearsall a year from now, or do you draft him knowing what you know ahead of time?
Yeah, draft responsibly, look to buy low later.
Well, for me, everything drafting is managing your expectations. The reason why people get upset, the reason why people were off JSN after 1 year is they did not manage their JSN expectations. And this is a rule of life, by the way. You can use this for anything. But if you manage the expectations of who you're drafting,
low, you'll never be disappointed.
But it's true. If you drafted JSN knowing, hey, he's sitting behind 2 all-pro wide receivers, he's probably not going to have a high production profile year one, you were not upset with what happened in year one. But if you drafted JSN going, ooh, JSN, goo goo gaga, then you were very disappointed with what you got last year.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's just had a kid.
That is true. That is true. Congrats.
He's been saying goo goo gaga a lot recently.
Let's move on to the last pick in the last night's draft and our last relevant pick overall, and that is at number 2, Xavier Legette, or Xavier Legette, as Uncle Roger called him. Legette, sorry. From South Carolina, goes to the Carolina Panthers. Zack, what do you think about this pick?
Zack. This is a really tough one to evaluate, right? First of all, really like the person that Xavier Legette is and what he's had to overcome to get here. What a production profile last year. If he had done this 2 years in a row, he'd be a top 10 pick, right? But there's all these question marks of like, why couldn't you do anything for 4 years? You can do anything for 4 years. There's no production. It's not like there was a ramp up and then boom, no, there was no production the first 4 years. The second thing is obviously the landing spot. Now, look, I'm a huge Dave Canales believer. What he's done the last 2 years in 2 different spots with 2 different quarterbacks that nobody expected anything from. Geno Smith 2 years ago and Baker Mayfield last year. What he was able to do with those guys was nothing short of a miracle. But they did have players in place for them to be able to do that. They had Mike Evans, they had Chris Godwin, they had Rashad White, and in Seattle they had DK Metcalf, they had Tyler Lockett, and they drafted Ken Walker that year. This is a tough evaluation process. I heard what Dave Canales said. We're gonna get him in screens and this and that, and that's kind of what you want, right, for Xavier Legette. But man, I'm a little concerned. There's just so much that makes me wary of making a draft pick if I'm looking at Xavier Legette. Like Xavier Legette is somebody that would have to fall to like the mid to late second round for me to feel comfortable investing a draft pick in, because I don't know. There's so much uncertainty in that offense. There's so much uncertainty with Bryce Young. I do believe in Dave Canales, but again, when you provide the context of he succeeded in these situations with proven talent there, it's different than what he's inheriting here in Carolina, where there was a lot of bad things on that offense last year, to put it nicely. So I do like Xavier Legette, the player. I try not to take into account the analytics, the 5th year breakout, so to say, as Bob says, because there's a lot of context to that when you dive deeper into Xavier Legette. But man, when he put on film last year was special. It was really fun to watch. It was dynamic. But I always go back to what Bob says. This is a 23-year-old dude doing it against guys who are 18 and 19 years old. So how much do you take that into account?
And I think we can all agree the film last year, awesome. But at the end of the day, and I'm not trying to discredit anything he went through, obviously not great stuff, but like at the end of the day, there is development that is not happening in that time frame. Yes, he finally put it all together in the final year, and there's a lot of things that had to happen for that to even maybe take place. They lost their top wide receiver coming into the season on Antoine Wells, Juice Wells. They had a new offensive coordinator come in. How much of that is, part of like maybe that system is just what really worked? Not saying that that's the case, but you can't look at all of this cool, fancy, rose-colored upside and not look at the same thing and be like, well, man, 4 years of nothing. I mean, nothing. And feel really good about it. I think, like you said, Zach, I think mid to late second is where I'll feel okay, because in that range, you're kind of crapshooting anyway. Probably the highest upside in that range that you're going to have in drafts, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But because he's one of the few people I think that are even maybe not left on the board, but somebody who could profile as a higher level, one on a team type wide receiver with that, explosiveness, body size, body type, and all that. There's definitely some upside, but I think it's your risk palatability that's going to come to play with where you are willing to, and if you draft much, if any, Xavier Legette.
Yeah, the tough thing is it kind of feels like Jonathan Mingo 2.0. I do like Legette more than Jonathan Mingo though, but he is a boom bust kind of prospect. And you like you said, Zach, you watched the film. His 5th-year breakout. The 5th-year breakout is incredible. He won contested catches. He became much more nuanced as a route runner. The yards after the catch ability, especially at his size. We're getting a lot of Debo comps to guys like Malachi Corley, but Xavier Legette, could be used in a very Debo-esque kind of way where, if they are using him on screens or manufactured touches like that, and then letting him, make things happen down the field as well. Maybe not a lot of intermediate routes for Xavier Legette, but that's okay because they got Deontay Johnson who can get open. So I think the complementary football that they can play between Legette and Johnson could work out in Legette's favor to help him develop. He's not going to be looked at to really carry that wide receiver room. Deontay is definitely the wide receiver one there. So allow him to have some more time to develop. I think they need to continue to add more weapons for that to really come to fruition. But, I agree. I think Xavier Legette for me is a mid to late 2nd round pick. We'll see how the running backs really fall out. Depending on how they go for that 2nd round. But at the same time, he also has some of the most upside at that pick. So still interested definitely in Xavier Legette, but wary, especially if you're picking him up anywhere like in the late 1st, early 2nd. You got to be, make sure you're cautious regarding the analytics and the late breakout. As good as he is, there's a lot of other good players in this draft as well that might feel safer about.
All right, well, that's it for the 1st round talent. You guys want to take questions for like 10 minutes or so before we head out?
Let's rock and roll. I'm sure there's
Sean,
plenty there.
Pick one for me. What do you got for us, Sean?
They're all good.
All right, who wants to answer this? We'll just have one person answer a question so we get some in here. Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr.?
Man, I'd probably profile wise, I lean Worthy, honestly. And situation as much as I like Brian Thomas, but Brian Thomas is probably gonna be the one. So yeah, I'm in a tough spot. I'd probably take Brian Thomas.
Okay.
Maybe. I'll split it in drafts.
Okay.
Split your exposure.
Diversify the profile.
Sean, next one. What is the strategy for teams with multiple mid/late round firsts? Draft quarterback 3 and get a late wide receiver, or taking a roam and hoping Maye falls / taking a Nix or Penix?
I mean, honestly, just thank whoever your Lord is, because this is a great year to have a lot of mid to late first, in my opinion. There's so much value falling on the board, and there are going to be drafts that just break awesome because there are going to be players like that, like Xavier Worthy, who I think there'll be discussions where he gets drafted over Odunze and possibly Malik Nabers. Whether he should or shouldn't, not up for discussion right now, but in all honesty, this is just a great time to have him. I mean, if you're, did it say whether it's rebuilding or anything like that, or just late first?
Yeah.
I mean, as always, rule of thumb: take the best value on the board, whatever, or best player available on the board, best value available on the board. Who's most valuable in a startup right now? Who would the league most in general want?
Knowing your league is important here.
All of these things are things to take into consideration. I don't think there's any super wrong answer. Penix would be the one wrong answer I can think of, but otherwise you're looking at so much awesome fun value at that point in drafts.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of taking Rome or Nabers early and then picking up a quarterback.
Sure.
I feel a bit I feel safer with one of the big 3 wide receivers.
I can agree with that versus an earlier quarterback and a later wideout.
Early.
I like that.
So I like that probably, but honestly, it could go either way because also I like the upside of a guy like Maye, early, especially if you don't need production right away. But also, locking in Nabers, locking in Rome Odunze long term is a really good move to make for your team.
Find one for Zack. Find a good one for Zack.
And we'll find one for Zack right now. And just, hey, you definitely want to get your question answered. Super chats are prioritized over everything else. Find a good one for Zack, though, Sean. Zack, where does Jayden Daniels go in one quarterback leagues?
Oh, wow.
That's a good one.
Well, there's a difference of where would he go and where would I take him, right?
Okay. Well, yeah, give us both then.
Yeah, he asked where he'd go.
He'd probably go. Man, that is tough. That answer changes so much league to league, right? Caleb Williams goes first round, probably mid first round. Jayden Daniels.
I don't think Daniels is far behind because you have to take into consideration his rushing ability.
I do though.
So
maybe that's where the answer differs, right? Maybe he goes late first.
Yeah.
early second.
I'd
think
want
that's the
so
range. I
many
think that's
other
range
wide
first.
receivers.
I am with you. I'm just saying that will be in discussions.
I'd want so many other wide receivers before I want Jayden Daniels in this draft, or even a couple of the running backs too. I would not feel comfortable drafting Jayden Daniels. I am not a huge Jayden Daniels fan. I'm not anti Jayden Daniels. I'm wary of a quarterback that can't take a hit and doesn't know how to not take a hit. It's a huge thing when you're investing, in one quarterback. It's probably a late first round pick, and that's a big deal. That is a big deal to miss on. And in Superflex, it is 103, 104, and if you miss on that, you are setting yourself back for years in your league. So that's why I'm wary of taking him where he's required to be taken. I could be totally wrong. Okay, I was wrong on CJ Stroud last year. We're not always right. We're not perfect. Sometimes we make wrong calls. It is what it is. But I'm willing to accept that if it happens, right? So I think he's got to go in one quarterback's probably before the end of the first round in one quarterback leagues. I would not take him before the mid-second round.
Yeah, and I think I would let him drop much farther than ADP probably. I think it's probably going to end up being closer to the early second because of how many wide receivers and running backs hopefully are going to be in this draft class that we like. But the thing with Jayden Daniels in one quarterback league, it's not super flex. So, you have these 6 first-round quarterbacks scattered throughout the first 3 rounds of your one quarterback
There's
draft.
just no reason to draft.
So why would you take Jayden Daniels even in the mid-second?
Yeah.
If you can pick up JJ McCarthy later, you can pick up Maye maybe later. I mean, you can go get Bo Nix later if you really just need a backup or a quarterback 3. And at that point, in one quarterback especially, I usually would rather trade my second-round pick for a quarterback than use a second-round pick on a quarterback.
Yeah. No, I think that's an awesome point. I think the answer is probably just too early.
Yeah.
In all honesty, whether it's, just positional value comes into play here in one quarterback. And then you have the lack of scarcity at the position in this draft. Like, yeah, I think he'll probably go on the fringe of the first round, but realistically, why take him there? You play that game of, I think we discussed this similarly before in one of the last questions, what wide receivers, running backs, even tight ends are you looking at that pick, at that fringe first, compared to where other quarterbacks are going and the quality of those players? You could end up with 2 very viable options at the 201 and 301, wherever the pick is, as opposed to, maybe you get Jayden Daniels at 201, but then the wide receiver you're looking at is a day 3 pick, which, God forbid day 3, but, it's going to be very different quality of players that you're looking at positionally, but the quarterback viability at both picks is still going to be pretty good. So I'd say take the quarterback later. Don't even worry about Daniels. He's going to be overdrafted more than likely, just positional viability wise.
Yeah.
Sean, what else you got for us? How many running backs go in round 2?
In round 2 of the NFL draft, or just day 2, or are we talking about round 2 in fantasy? What are we saying?
I would imagine round 2 of the NFL draft.
That's what I was thinking as well.
1, 2.
I'm
Sounds
with
about
Nate.
right.
I think more.
Let's
so
put
like
the line.
the third is going to be where they're.
Line is 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah. That's
One
what
and a
I
half
think. I think
over,
Brooks is
under,
going to go in the
over.
second.
That's the line of the day, boys. Rewind line of the day. Running backs 1.5 in the second round.
There you go.
I think Brooks is locked in to a second with the Cowboys, and then Benson.
Nobody else.
And then Benson, I think, could be a second rounder. But I think outside of that, most of those guys are third rounders.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think 2 is probably where your number is.
And by the way, we've been preaching this for a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least I have. I know you go, the talents or the value is still there, which it is. But I was telling people, address your running back position
Elsewhere.
a long time ago, because this draft is not going to do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sean, you got anything else for us over there? Weird question. Who do you think Buffalo will draft first tonight, since they traded out of the first round?
Trade down again.
Possible.
I think they're going to go wide receiver.
Use this pick to go buy Debo.
They could. They gained themselves some time.
The old trade out.
To make a trade. But I think they go wide receiver. I think they go
Be
Adonai
interesting.
Mitchell is probably who I would expect them to go. I've also seen Ladd McConkey on some of the mock drafts that have come out today for tonight. I think a wide receiver is definitely in play there. Maybe Troy Franklin. I think some people would really like Troy Franklin. on the Bills.
I wouldn't hate that.
Outside of those three, I don't think anyone else is really in play for the 33rd overall pick.
I mean, a wide receiver makes the most sense, but this is a team that lost a lot of players on defense as well, and only 9 went last night. So there's still a lot of defensive talent on the board.
For sure.
I don't predict that, but I'm saying it wouldn't surprise me, especially with the depth at wide receiver that they can get at the end of the second round.
And they've been preaching this entire time, with the Stephon Diggs trade, Joe Brady, as well as, their GM, Brandon Beane, has preached that they don't need a wide receiver one for Josh Allen. They don't care about getting an alpha wide receiver for that offense. They say they just need 3 decent wide receivers. They think they can make that work. We've seen Joe Brady make that work before in Carolina. So they got Curtis Samuel there now. So,
wheels up.
Wheels up.
So just to throw out food for thought, since we're talking wide receivers, Buffalo Bills confirmed 30 visits. Wide receivers: Troy Franklin, Devontae Walker.
All right.
So there's some thoughts, some speculation to throw out for funsies.
All right. So we got another super chat here from our man Wafflehauser. Saying, I don't understand why Bauer's landing spot is bad. It's just not the Los Angeles Chargers or New York Jets. What am I missing?
The quarterback is the problem here because the
volume,
volume, quarterback, quality of the offense, take your pick. And it's just a matter of why draft them in the same spot. There's so many players that, again, looking at the grand spectrum of dynasty and fantasy football, tight ends, unless you're a top producer, you're not sniffing the wide receiver production like wide receivers that are going to be going in that range are. Before the draft, Odunze and Brock Bowers were back-to-back picks. Why on earth would you take at this point? Not that Odunze's landing spot was great either, but why would you take Bowers over him or even have that discussion? You're just looking at not good quarterback play that we believe. Maybe they draft somebody today that solves that. Who knows? But poor quarterback play, lack of volume offense with mouths to feed. It'd be different if they didn't have Adams or Myers, but they do.
The thing is, it's the expectations.
Sure.
Because coming into the draft, if you went on keep, trade, cut, Brock Bowers was the tight end 2.
Yep.
The tight end 2. And there's just with this landing spot,
just back
with
where
the
he should
production.
be.
Exactly. He's back where he should be. He's still got to prove himself. He's a generational prospect. We're not worried about him long term. But that production, like we go back to, we play fantasy football. It's a game based off of stats. It's not based off of talent. It's based off of a box score. And the box score for talent definitely helps. But the box score for the Raiders and Brock Bowers in that is not going to be as good as many other tight ends this year. If he has a top 12 finish, that's great. I could see it within the realm of possibilities, even in a bad landing spot. He's got that much talent, but we're not going to see a top 5 finish his rookie year. We're not going to see Kyle Pitts breaking over 1,000 yards his rookie season. We're not going to see that with Brock Bowers most likely in this offense. And it's not that it's not just the Chargers or the Jets. I mean, we were talking about it before the live stream. This is the worst landing spot of any team within the first 20 picks for Brock Bowers. Not just because of the fact that there's another tight end there that, he's obviously going to be above, but the quarterback, everything we keep talking about, the volume, things like that. He could have gone to the Saints, the Colts, Seattle, the Bengals. There's so many more landing spots that were within the realm of possibilities for Bowers that would have been better than this. Even the Tennessee Titans, the Giants. I mean, any spot basically other than the Raiders would have been better for Bowers. It's just unfortunately like a worst case scenario for Bowers, who's still a really talented player. Just this kind of sucks.
By the way, props to Waffle for sending my kid to college today. What I said earlier, Waffle, was just the type of game scripts that the Raiders are going to play this year. I don't believe they're high passing, scoring 30, 35 points a game. I think the Raiders are trying to really slow down the game, defensively, hold teams down, and win a 13-10 game. And again, that doesn't mean he's not a top 12 tight end, but he's not tight end 2. And at least not off the rip because of that and the quarterback play as well. So you have to look at the moves that they've made this year, right? They're really, it seems that they've invested in Zamir White. It seems that they made a big effort to bring in a lot of defensive talent. Christian Wilkins being the main priority there on the defensive line, $100 million contract. They didn't really do that for their offense. They didn't bring anybody like that. So it really seems like they're going to try and slow down games, stop other teams from scoring, and try and score 13 points and win a game. And that's not conducive to a high volume tight end, which is what we had predicted, or what those other landing spots, as Nate said, had really provided. So I agree. This is probably, and look, this is the right move by the Raiders. You take the best player available and you figure it out later, right? That is what you're supposed to do when you're at 13. You don't draft for need. You take the best player available, and that Brock Bowers probably was at 13. But for fantasy, it sucks, at least for 1 year. It's not great. It's not a terrible landing spot. It's just for year one, it's not conducive to fantasy points, which is what we care about at the end of the day.
Bowers is still a top 6 tight end in Dynasty. Like, it's not terrible. It's just production-wise going to be a little limited.
So we got another couple super chats rolling in here. These are from Juice TV. Great question from Jacob M. So he's saying, I have Pat, Deshaun, and Carr. This is quarterbacks. I'm assuming Patrick Mahomes there. Wide receivers are Garrett, MPJ, T, Amari Cooper, TJ, and Travis. And 104, 111, and 112. And don't know how to go. His running backs are Brian Robinson and Jaylen Warren. This is a 12-team super flex with no premiums. It's got the 104, the 111, and the 112. Not sure how to go. I mean, honestly, Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, not really inspiring a lot for me here.
Yeah.
Especially, we were talking about Deshaun Watson on the way up.
I mean, can we move Deshaun Watson for a running back? That would be great. And then you can pick up maybe JJ McCarthy with the 104.
I would like that a lot.
As a possible
honestly.
strategy. Or maybe using the 104 to go after, I don't think you can go get Gibbs or Hall with just the 104. You might, but the 104 and the 112, do we hate that to go grab a franchise running back for your team?
No, I don't hate that at all. I think it's a great idea if you can pull that off. If you're going to stay and pick, again, Juice, don't overthink this. Just take the best player available. Don't peg yourself into landing spots. That's the mistake we make all the time. It's something that we talked about in our mistakes to not make. Don't peg yourself to a specific player that you want to draft. Make sure that you're taking the best player available. Just because you have 2-3 quarterbacks doesn't mean week 6 of the season you will. We saw what happened last year. So if JJ McCarthy is the best player available, take JJ McCarthy. If Malik Nabers is there at 104 and he's the best player, don't overthink this. I like what Nate said. If you can package those 2 picks, go get a running back, do that. But if you're that is the most important thing for me. It's a lesson I learned last year by overdrafting some players I probably shouldn't have, is just soak the value that comes to you, especially in the first round. Do not make a mistake by saying, I want this guy, I'm going to draft this guy here. Just take the best player available if that's what you have to do.
Don't draft before you draft.
Yeah, and your starting lineup does not have to be set at the end of your rookie draft. Yeah. Like, you can have 4 quarterbacks. That's a good problem to have. That gives you some versatility heading into the season where you can trade one of those guys and, maybe fill out your lineup in August or July. You don't have to fill it out right now heading into May.
Yeah, true. So, all right, that is going to wrap it up for us today. We will be back tomorrow, and then we will be back also on Sunday morning to wrap up the draft. Don't forget, you can go payup.com/Dynasty and you can pre-order your rookie draft guide right now. All the description is down below. And look, I don't know when your rookie drafts are, but if you're doing it in person, show up in style, go ahead, grab yourself a shirt. You will not regret it. And yes, if you live in northern climates, you could grab a sweatshirt too. So until next time, everybody, for Zach, for Bob, for Nate, I'm your host, Michael Bauer. Thank you so much for been a long morning. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Dynasty Rewind. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. And as always, be kind. Please rewind.